You do. Go.
I am so excited to interview my next guest. You will be amazed. Her name is Annette Densham, my guest from Queensland, Australia. It is Monday for you. Words have always intrigued her. Listen to her accomplishments. She's a mother, Business Awards writer, a journalist, a profile building strategist, Grand Stevie Awards winner, and Gold Stevie Award winner for PR Campaign of the Year. From the moment Annette could hold a book, she loved nothing than immersing herself in stories of adventure and mystery. When it came time to choose a career, it was a natural pathway for her. Curious and creative mind to venture into the world of media, where inquisitive nature could delve into other people's stories. So we share that. I was at the Hawaii State Bar Association, and my job was to improve the image of attorneys. Tough
That's
position.
a tough gig.
But
It's
you have
like
over,
improving accountants.
yes, oh my gosh, yes. You have over 30 years in media, corporate communications, and public relations. Annette loves nothing more than asking lots of questions to uncover the incredible stories. But today she'll be answering questions. And I just am so excited to ask you. And I have to give Sandy Davies some a plug on the Power to Rise Above. Um, Annette and I are two of 30 authors, and her story is amazing. I would love to get your perspective on how we teach children who are in a state of fear. You mentioned before limiting beliefs. How do we encourage them to find their voice when I think a lot of parents don't realize that they're causing a lot of high stress, high anxiety because the expectations are very unrealistic, but they're put upon these children that they need to do this in order to succeed, in order to be, meet society's expectations. What's your input on that?
Oh, I tell you what, being a parent to, millennial children is such a different experience to probably how our parents raised us. Life was, not perfect. I'm not romanticizing the past, but it certainly was a lot simpler. And I think the way that we've approached parenting is that we started working on ourselves first. When we became parents, we talked about what we wanted for our kids and what we wanted their lives to look like, especially when they leave the nest and they go out there to be, that individual and whatever they wanted to do. So we invested heavily into personal development because having come from, two backgrounds of, bit more so me, chaos and trauma, is that I didn't want to share that with my kids. I didn't want them to experience the uncertainty and the fear and put onto them my fears and self-limiting beliefs. So taking the time to, I think, look at yourself and working out what those fears that you have, what your limiting beliefs are. Because I have a friend who has two little kids, and she's incredibly afraid of the ocean. And her kids are incredibly afraid of the ocean. And I said to her one day, you know that you're more likely to get hit by a car than you are to be eaten by a shark or drown. And she went, yes, but can happen. And I went, yeah, but you still get in a car. You're not scared of that because that's what you're used to. And I said, your kids are now terrified of the ocean. And that's going to continue to impact their lives on an ongoing basis, because what other things are you scaring them out of? I was going to swear there and I stopped myself. Kind of like
And that's the
dirty
thing.
potty.
There's two roads, right? My dad's before he was born, his sister was found 3 years old, drowned in a stream, and so I made sure that I was fearful of water, and we live in Hawaii, ocean, pools everywhere, and so
Lots of
I
water.
made sure that when they were babies that they took swim lessons because I didn't want them, like you said, I didn't want to pass on that fear. So I think you have two parents. One, I'm going to protect you because you might drown, you might, and then the other one, like you take proactive. And I still, and even when they were little, don't go out far. Dad's not here. But now, once they, they know, they know how to swim. But how do you trust when you don't even realize you have these limited beliefs because you think they're true, right? These fears
Oh,
really feel real.
yeah, and that's a great point, is that, our brain cannot distinguish between fact or fiction in our head. So if we're thinking, I'm scared of water, I'm scared of water, I've got to stop my kids from going in the water, I'm scared of water, it is really hard not to impose those fears. That's why I think personal development is so important, is that even if you think you're the most perfect person on the planet and you've got nothing holding you back, personal development is like having a shower every day. You wouldn't go, I had a shower last week, so I don't need another shower now. As a human being, we should be constantly looking at how we can evolve and grow and change and challenge our own mindsets, because that's what makes the world such an interesting place, is people who are willing to hold the mirror up to themselves and go, where are my faults and my flaws? Where are the things that I can work on that will make me a better person? Because at the end of the day, we're really role modeling our behavior for our children. So we may never, ever speak, you should be afraid of the ocean. Our actions will dictate that, because those little faces are watching us and how we respond in situations. And I guess I remember someone very wise saying to me once, don't fight in front of the kids. Even if it's a really important issue, wait till they're in bed and then have a very calm conversation, because your kids will watch how you interact and deal with conflict. And if you come out swinging and yelling and screaming, then that's how they're going to do it. But how do you stop those limiting beliefs and putting them onto your kids? I think it's, being self-aware as well, which ties in with personal development, that if you're just kind of like flowing on and doing things the way that they've always been done because that's the way that your parent did it and that's the way that their parent did, then I think our job as parents is to raise these kids so they're better than us. We had a conversation around our dinner table the other night where my eldest son said, I already know I'm smarter than you, Mum. And it's like, all right, okay, we might need to work a little bit on modesty there, but his confidence in the fact that we had equipped him and we'd opened him to books and other ways of thinking and introduced other people to his life was not just us. And I think that's another challenge that we have, Karen, is that we've become so insular in our families, either through distance, geography, through stupid spats that we have with our family that could be resolved if we picked up the phone and we had a conversation, is the more people that you can bring into your kids' lives, then they get, it's almost like going to a buffet. They get to taste lots of different things and see lots of different belief systems and lots of different ways to do things. So you're not the be all and end all in terms of their development. You're obviously there for the really important first 7 years. But as they start heading out to the world and to the school, you've got to let them know that it's, we're all different. There's different ways of doing things, and give them space to make their own minds up, because I think we forget that kids aren't just these, blank canvases that we just pour everything that we're into. They come out with, like you think about your kid when you held your kid for the first time. I remember looking at my son, my eldest son, and the nurse saying to me, she swaddled him all up and she went, oh, no child ever escapes my swaddles. And the next minute, these two little arms come out and these two little eyes are just like staring at me. And I'm like going, this is a strong-willed human being. And he is. He's just next door. He is incredibly strong-willed. And that was how he was born. There's certain things that we've fed into him that has molded him, but he's his own person.
And that's what's hard, right? When we have, and I just read this, when kids break the rules, it's actually a good thing because it means that they are confident, they're open-minded. There's actually a study that says they are prone to be more successful. And parents are like, oh no, why can't they just listen? Why can't they just do what I say? What do you say to these parents who think, if they did what I said, their life would be fine?
We had this conversation last night when we were at the Red Hot Chili Peppers concert. We took both boys, and
Ooh.
my husband was like trying to explain to the process, and they've just like ignored him and gone on. And he's like, oh, well, and I said, they'll either work it out or they won't. And if they don't work it out, hopefully we've equipped them with the skills that they can go and ask somebody for help, which they did. So I think in that, how do you learn to ride a bike? You get on it, you fall off, you get back up, you fall off, you skin your arm, you graze your knee, you do all of those things, but it teaches you how to find that balance on the bike, because hitting the ground hurts more than going in a straight line. We have to give kids space to make their own mistakes, even though we are sitting there going, I told them not to do that. Because how did you and I learn not to do stupid things again? We did them. And I know that there's some parents who'll go, yeah, but what about if they get badly injured or they die? And I would obviously never wish that upon anybody, but we can't wrap them up in cotton wool either, because we're seeing a generation of kids who are unable to converse face to face with people because they've gotten so used to texting.
Yes.
We've got kids who won't break the rules because of that fear of, the rules people coming down on top of them. We've created this world of fear for them when it's actually not that bad, that you can go break a rule and, the world is not going to fall on top of you, but it may give you some really valuable life lessons. And like I said before, we are not the be all and end all of the universe's great knowledge and wisdom. Is that sometimes there are things that you have to learn yourself, and it is hard as a parent to let your kids go. My youngest is on the autism spectrum. So, there was, my husband used to always say, you're too soft on him, you're too soft on him. But as he's gotten older, I've realized that by helping him build his self-esteem and his confidence, say to him, you know what, Quinn, I think it's time for you to get a job. And he goes, oh, but I don't know what to do. Well, do this and this and this, and off you go. The great example the other day, came home, he's been gifted money from his aunt and uncle, and I lost the bank book that it was in. And he's like, Mum, where's this bank book? And I went, I don't know, mate. It's with this bank. Why don't you just go in, take your passport and your license and see if they, and he was like, oh, I don't think I can do that. And I said, well, I don't have time to help you. So you either do it or you don't do it. The choice is yours. And he came home on Friday and he went, all right, I went to the bank. They found my bank account. I've converted it to internet banking, and I've set up so that I can transfer this amount of money and do this. Now, what would he have learned if I'd said, I could see the uncertainty and the fear on his face. What would he have learnt if I'd said, don't worry, darling, I'll do it for you? He would have learnt nothing.
Nothing. I love that. See, and that's the thing where parents just don't want to see their child's heart broken. They don't want to see the tears. They don't want to see the fear. And so they just get right back in there and they just, oh, I'll help you. I will prevent the hurt. But I love how the skin knees, I think nowadays, the parents are just fearful of seeing their children in emotional or physical pain. I mean, how important is
absolutely.
it? Yeah, how important is it that we need? I mean, it's not even it's a good idea, but don't you think it is necessary? Why is it so necessary for kids to experience natural consequences?
Because it builds a resiliency. It builds an understanding of the flow of the world, because we do not live in Star Trek world, and we do not live in a place of all sunshine and rainbows. There's bad stuff that's going on out in the world. There's bad stuff that goes online. And if we wrap them up too much in cotton wool, we don't teach them those skills on how to problem solve. And we don't teach them that it's okay to fail. Somewhere, I don't know when and who great genius went, failing is bad, you know, you've got to be perfect, you can't make mistakes. But if you look at all of the incredible innovations and all of the amazing inventions that this world has generated over the past thousands of years, that came from making a mistake. You know, Henry Ford didn't create, you know, his Ford company by going, all right, that's perfect, let's go. I bet he had a few stuff ups along the way where he went, oh my God, I've lost so much money, and, you know, how am I going to recoup this? He went, well, what did I learn from wagging school or being truant from school? You know, like, I could tell you a few things. I was the queen of truancy at high school, but that's a whole other conversation. But, you know, as an example, you know, we said, oh, kid, you've got to go to school, you know, you've got to keep your attendance up because of this. But, you know, those kids who are rule breakers like me, that was so restrictive. You know, I had to see what the consequences were for wagging school. And I learned from that. You know, what I learned was, you know, wagging 3 months of year 11 meant that I had to go back and do it again, which meant that it took longer for me to achieve my goals. Now, my mother kept saying, you shouldn't do this. She punished me. You know, she did all of the things. But it wasn't until I actually learnt that myself where I went, oh, because isn't it different when someone says to you, you should do this or you should do that, that you listen to it and it's kind of like blah, 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 blah,
Exactly.
blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. And that's what's
What do you
happening,
know? Yeah,
right?
my
This is,
kids often go, you're old, mum. What do you know?
yeah. Oh, it's not. Yeah, nowadays it's so different. You guys were. I remember one of my students. He was 5. Did they have like cars and airplanes when you when you were little?
Like, I always say to my kids, I didn't come out this size. I've been a kid. I remember what it's like to be a kid. I remember not being listened to or heard or,
Well,
you
I
know, not being.
love stories. Sorry, love stories like yours because I think the parents that, who I tutor their kids who, they might be considered like truant and to the point where it's serious, right? And then I interview people like you and a lot of other people who did not take school seriously, but they learned from natural consequences. So this is where I really want to instill in parents that you do not need to follow all the rules. And like, I love what you just said, 3 months, right? But look
Yeah,
at you now.
I
I mean,
know.
not that I'm an educator and I'm all for education, but I really am starting to realize, right? Like, college is not a necessity. And I told this, my cousin, she's like, what do you mean? Because unless you're a doctor or so, certain careers, you need that license or that degree. But what do you say to that? That'd be a great closing question. What do you say to parents who say you need that college degree in order to like succeed or survive in the world today?
Well, you're talking to someone who started 3 degrees and never finished them. And I think I've done pretty well
I think so too.
because a lot of what I've learnt to be highly skilled in my field, I've learnt by doing. And university is not about doing, it's about like it again, it's just about streamlining people into rote. You know, this, if you do this, then this happens, then this happens. You know, I was speaking to someone last night who said that they had 2 candidates for a job, and one had a degree, the other one didn't. And the one without the degree just showed, I mean, this is like a very narrow field of people, but they showed an appetite for risk. They showed a willingness to think outside the box, and they weren't spending 20 hours researching something. They went, okay, here's the idea. Let's look at how we can implement this and let's give it a go and see what works. So I'm not opposed to tertiary education. I think there's very valuable skills that you learn there. But if your child is not academically inclined or doesn't want to do a career that, like you said, I certainly don't want a doctor cutting into my head who did a 6-week course online. I would like to know that they've studied anatomy and done all of that stuff. But if you're going into professions that aren't pivotal on that tertiary education,
then go start getting some experience in the actual industry. That's what I did. I think there's still space for that in this day and age, to go and actually immerse in what you want to do, because I've had many friends who've completed 3 or 4 year university degrees and got to the end of it and went, I actually really don't want to do that now. They're 40, 50, 60, $70,000 in debt, and they go off and do something else. So I'm a big one. My kids are now talking about whether they're going to do some tertiary education. My son's 22. He's had 3 years out of school, and he's finally gone, I actually know what I want to do now. Imagine if I'd pushed him at 17 to go, you must go and do this because you're good at it. Because school doesn't teach you all of the things that you're good at. They just teach you that you're very good at reading a textbook and doing tests.
Yes.
So you've got to make sure that you give kids the opportunity to go and try, put their feet in, rub their toes in, and get a taste before they make that final decision if college or university is what they need to be doing.
I love that. Okay, last question. If you had one motto to live by, what would it be?
It is what it is.
My husband always says that. I thought it was a local thing, and I'm telling
got
you,
a tattoo on my wrist. I got it tattooed on my wrist, so I can. It's upside down, but I look at it and I think, what can I change here? What can't I change here? What do I need to accept? And is it really bad, or is out of this bad something good's going to happen? So is what it is says, okay, I'm accepting that this is the situation that I'm in. I'm not going to beat myself up over it, because there's enough people externally to beat me up. I don't need to beat myself up. So it gives me space to go, what do I do with this next? Because then I'm not worrying about, oh my God, I haven't done this or I haven't done that. I always go, it is what it is. The train slate, it is what it is. Maybe we could get an Uber, or maybe we can get a bus, or maybe we can do something else. It just relaxes your whole nervous system so you can make decisions without freaking out and chewing your nails off.
You know what? I think that should be every parent's motto, because usually it's like, oh my gosh, you got a D, or you're behind in classes, or you're, fill in the blank. And then that's stress. Don't you think? You just internalize it and you pass it on to your kids, and you don't realize it's a choice, right? Accepting that.
Well, they feel like a failure. Instead, it
that's
is what it is. Yeah, let's talk about, did you study? What were the distractions that were around you? How can we help you to ensure that you've got time? Maybe you've got too many after school activities and you need a little bit more time to sit down and read your work, or to perhaps you need a tutor. Because when we freak out when our kids do something that we don't think fits with what our beliefs are and our rules are, is that we then reinforce on them all of that stress and all of that pressure. Whereas, if my son came home and he got a D in something, I'd just go, oh, well, mate, it's done and dusted now. There's nothing you can do, and go and change it. I wouldn't stress about it, because I think the thing we forget is that they are just kids. Yeah. And this is not the end of their life. This is the beginning of their life. And going back to failing sometimes is not a bad thing, because I tell you what, that kid went from D's and fails to finishing high school with A's and B's. He learnt his lesson by not doing his homework and not getting help from the teacher from failing. And that wouldn't have happened if I'd just gone, oh, darling, oh, that's terrible, you're grounded. I'm going to lock you in your room so you have to do your homework. You can't force people to do that. They have to come to it.
And they will. I love that, because I think when we force it, it's just, no one wants to be forced, right?
No, oh God, which is why I'm a rule breaker, because my mum was really strict. So I did everything possible to break her rules and see if I could not get caught.
And this is what led you to who you are today.
Absolutely. And because one of my other favorite sayings is, better to ask forgiveness than ask permission, because sometimes we wait for people to give us permission to do things, whereas I'll just go, well, let's go have a crack. what's the worst thing? Crack's an Australian term. Let's have a go. Let's just have a
Okay.
go. Yeah, sorry, I saw your face and I went, I'm speaking Australian. Example, we were in New York a few years ago and we went to Madison Square Garden to go see the basketball. We don't have anything like that here. And we're wandering around the building and we're lost. And I went up to this dorm and it was like the VIP, you know, they had the ropes and the carpet and the private lift. And I went up and I went, hey, mate, don't suppose you could let us go through there because we don't know where we're going. And he looked at me and he went, I like you. That was a really bad New York accent. Sorry, everyone from New York. And I mean, I know I asked permission, but I was confident enough to go up and say, because all the girls are going, oh, no, we can't go in there. Like, that's private. And it's like,
Why
here's
not?
another one. If you don't ask, you don't get. Look at
And then
me.
you went
Maybe
in.
to write a book
I was
on
gonna
saying,
say, you are coming up with really like these are parenting quotes to live by.
live
Annette's
by.
parenting quotes to live by. How
Let's
to
do it.
survive parenting 101. I love it. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, this was just, I think, an interview filled with little golden nuggets of wisdom that will reduce stress, which is my goal for parents, and just increase peace. Because I think if we all said it is what it is, you wouldn't be fighting against what is, because like you said, if a child refuses to go to school, no amount of forcing will make them go, oh, sure, okay, I'll just do that, right? If
Oh,
especially,
mummy, you said that. I'm going to do everything that you say. And I think that's an important part of childhood is that pushing of boundaries. And if we keep restricting those boundaries and forcing them into a corner, we're going to have a generation of people who are incapable of making decisions. Like, what happens if there's a zombie apocalypse? The human race is dead because these kids won't know what to do. You know, what happens when their marriages break up or they lose a job or, you know, or they
someone
get bullied
dies. Yeah, yeah.
online? You know, that I see this bullying and I see parents like, you know, I don't know whether I should say this or not,
No,
but I've
say it,
always
say it.
taught my kids that if they're being bullied, push back because bullies bully people who look and sound like victims. And if you push back, not in a violent way, but you stand up for yourself, and or if they continue, you bar them from whatever platform that you're on. And I guess that the worrying trend is that the kids think of these people as their friends. They're not your friends. If they're making you feel bad, they are not your friends. Maybe you're lonely for a while, but I tell you what, from one lonely kid to another,
Oh no, I think I lost you, Annette. I don't know if there's an internet connection or not, but I think I lost her. But what a great, great interview. I really appreciate it, Annette. And please read her story. Keep on walking in the power to rise above. Amazing, amazing inspiration. And I thank Annette for being here. I guess there's some internet issues, but thank you so much.